all I've got. So let's go into the Facebook group and make some humble apologies if it's going to work.
All right, so the pod mic is a dynamic mic and not whatever this one is that I've got.
Seems like it's working. Yay! I think it is working.
Yeah, we're live.
I think so. Do you know what would be really nice is if this is working, somebody could just let us know. I'm just going to mute my Facebook. Wow, that was a right old fiasco. If this is live, could somebody just sort of put in the comment that this is actually working? Oh yeah, great, live, says Leo. Okay, so here's the scoop, right? We use a piece of software called Ecamm Live, which is a Mac app which enables you to connect, example, Skype, and then it feeds Skype out to Facebook Live. Turns out that their server is down, which I don't think should affect anything, but I think Leo Mindel, who's joined us in the comments, is saying that it's probably doing some kind of license check, which is a little bit naughty because I've paid my license and it shouldn't really do that check every time I log in or what have you. Anyway, the fact is it broke. We've come up with a backup plan, and I can see myself. I can also see Paul Lacey. I can see Okey there as well, and Vito, who's got a brand new illustrious cam.
Can you see me?
No, we can just see something white.
Oh my god. God damn it.
But you know what, I'm going to say, Vito, should we just let you for 5 minutes see if you can figure it out, and then just hop in whenever you can, if that's all right. I hope that's okay. But thank you very much to everybody who's made the effort. I'm literally kind of like,
am I here?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
All right.
So anyway, that's my sincere apology. That's why it wasn't working, and that's why we're very late. But hopefully everything will run smoothly by now. Just to let you know, as always, if you go to the WPBuilds.com website, head over to the Archives tab, click on the News Archives link, and the top left post, or if you're on mobile, the one at the top, which is number 72. Is what we're going to be talking about today. And quick chance to introduce everybody and let them speak for themselves about who they are and what they do. Firstly, to my, I don't know where he is. He's over there. He's next to me is Paul Lacey. Hello, Paul.
Hello, how you doing? Paul here.
Good, thanks.
From the Dicky Bird studio. Sorry, you interrupting my... Oh, my gosh. I tried to do it for the first time. Paul here from the Dicky Bird studio. And also represent RunCloud as a brand ambassador.
Very nice. Thank you. Thanks for joining us yet again. Paul's become a bit of a regular, and he's taken on the responsibility of kind of introducing some of these items so that I don't have to. As this week has Okey. So Jay is down. Beneath me. He in no sense of the word other than on this call. He's in Australia, so we're keeping him awake, and this delay hasn't helped that. So hello, Jay, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jay from Launch Digital Group, digital marketing and web development agency in Melbourne, Australia.
Very, very nice. Yeah. And finally, hopefully the stuff is working now. We have Vito Peleg. Can you hear us, Vito? Is it all working? Is everything hunky-dory?
Everything seems awesome. I have a brand new setup that I already flaunt to you guys before the call. Yeah. I'm excited to be here. I'm Vito from WP Feedback. We're a communication tool for WordPress professionals.
It's all true. Everything that everybody said, I can guarantee is true. We'll get stuck right into it today. If you don't know, the purpose of this really is just to sort of have a bit of a natter around WordPress news. We always go off topic, but we'll try to stay on topic as much as we can. If you want to follow along, go to that post and you'll at least get an idea of the articles that are coming up. We deal with them in the order that they're in that post. Now, this first one, like, I'm not necessarily the best qualified to talk about this. I feel like this could be Jay's bag, but Gary Pendergast, who is one of the core contributors to the WordPress project, he introduced an article on make.wordpress.org this week called PHP Coding Standard Changes, and he goes into, well, fairly large amount of detail, I think, about some of the upcoming stuff which is happening in PHP and how that relates to WordPress. He talks about, you know, updates to closures, short syntax, short array syntax, short, I love saying this phrase, short ternary operator. You don't get to say that very often, and so on and so forth. So not really being a developer anymore who wrangles with code, I was wondering if there was anything in there, Jay, in particular, that you thought was of interest?
To be honest, I've read through it, had a quick read. I wasn't didn't find it too fascinating, to be honest with you. One thing I find a bit interesting is that WordPress as a project, I don't really like their coding standards to begin with anyway. It's totally different to the rest of the way the Fig PHP, you know, coding standards are. So if you were to program in any other project outside of WordPress, they implement completely different coding standards to what they do with WordPress. So it's sort of, I've never really followed the WordPress coding standards anyway. I generally go for more PHP specific coding standards. So yeah, I thought it's interesting. Like, you know, I personally like short array syntax, but their reason seems logical as to why they want to sort of implement, you know, using the old standards. But yeah, not too much to comment on it, really, to be honest.
Yeah, I actually was lucky enough to meet Gary at WordCamp in Europe. I did an interview with him, which will be coming out on the WP and Op podcast at some point in the near future. It's a solid, really genuinely nice, engaging person. You know, really seemed very what's the word? You know, it's like a humble guy at the same time as obviously being incredibly knowledgeable. And I'd never met him before, and within a couple of minutes we were chatting, you know, like old friends. It was really nice. So anyway, there we go. That was the first thing. And for those of you that develop themes, plugins, anything really, I thought that was of interest to those of you. The next one is written by our good friend David McCann. David McCann operates this website called WebTNG with the subtitle of "Knowledge is an Activity," and he makes a point in this article. It's called the WordPress Fire Drill: 3 tasks 100% of us waste time on. And I found myself nodding as I went through this. It was like, yep. And the 3 things that he sort of goes on about are the 3 typical things, like when you install a WordPress website, and I know that I do this because I do them all manually. We always go out and we find some sort of contact form, and we find some sort of backup solution, and we find some sort of security plugin. And basically he's saying, why don't we just get this stuff into core? And then I don't know, I'm sure that David will take this in the way it's offered. He's mentioning the number of hours that have been lost, and I can't remember something, but he reckons that in WordPress 2.5 million days have been lost by people like me and you going out and finding these things. I certainly think there's no harm in putting a contact form in. The security stuff, I don't know whether that's because this, obviously the environment that you're setting up could be really specific and it might alter things, but backups I've got no problem. I can't see why this stuff couldn't be handled in core. And then other people, you know, hook into those. You know, there's a standard place where backups are stored, and some plugin could overwrite that way of doing it, or they could hook into it. Anyway, so that's David's article. Anybody want any comments on that?
I think that it is. I totally agree. To start with, you know, like there is a lot of time wasted in the ecosystem, just because we are an open source kind of base to it. It gives the ability to creating all kinds of additional kind of tools that for any other software that is out there would have been part of the core from day one. And I think that WordPress are starting to kind of realize this, especially with Gutenberg coming into place. But still, there's and site and you know the security feature from 5.2 site health. So they are kind of understanding that a little more than there is a need for some native features to be added on, just to create a solid experience for everyone, you know, every person that uses the platform. And I think security and backups are part of the, you know, it is part of the core. Even if it's not done through WordPress, every WordPress professional knows that it's part of the core. You know, we consider it as part of the core. You go in, you install WordFence, so you install some kind of a backup tool of your choice, and you install Yoast, right? These are like the three things that you have straight up, no matter what you do. So I can definitely see this happening, even though, you know, it's probably going to kill some businesses, which is never a good thing.
Yeah, I think David's point is that the WordPress project have this sort of statement. I don't know if it's written down and codified anywhere, but I think they say that if 80% of the people who use WordPress have a need for a particular feature, then it should be in core. So that's quite a high bar. And I think David's point is that 80% of the people, yes, probably have a contact form immediately. Yes, go to some length to back things up. And yes, whether it's just something simple like two-factor authentication for security, or if it's, well, there's a whole myriad of things that you could do. But I think he's probably right that I would be interested to know if, you know, the people who are watching this, I wonder if that's true. 80% of us are doing that. But nice article, David, and well written. Really liked it. Paul, anything to say on that, or shall we move on?
Nothing to add from me on that.
Okay,
Good article.
Okay, in which case I will just move right along. A big shout out to these guys, because basically it's the staple of everything that we put out. It's WP Tavern. If you've never come across WP Tavern, which I'm sure you have, it was founded in something like 2009, and they're kind of like the repository of everything that's WordPress, really. All the news goes in there. And this week they've got an article about something we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, I believe it was. This news pack opens up applications. An application process for phase 2. Basically, Newspack is like a predefined version of WordPress with all the things that a growing news agency could use. Now, although this in itself is, you know, this piece of news is not that interesting, if you scroll right to the very last paragraph, this is what caught my attention. And it says that it's a free hosting for charter members. So basically, if you get into their kind of beta testing, they're calling it charter members, you'll get a free account up until the 29th of February, 2020. This is what I thought was interesting. News organizations with revenues under $500,000 can expect to pay $1,000 per month, and organizations that generate revenue over $500,000 will pay $2,000 a month. Now, just those numbers made my sort of jaw hit the floor, and I was wondering if any of you guys thought, wow, that's a lot of money, or at that level, you know, because I was thinking this would be for, like, you know, the Scarborough Evening News or the Oklahoma Journal, or, you know, whatever, some sort of small news organization. Those numbers seem pretty decent to me.
I think that when you're running a business like that is generating this amount, and you're counting on the website to generate this revenue, you're pretty much spending this in terms of maintenance or whatever kind of tools you have added on there on top of the hosting costs.
Yeah.
So we have clients that are paying more than this per month. So it doesn't seem too far-fetched. It just depends on what's included, I guess.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But it just seemed to me like quite a lot of money, basically, to have like a pre-installed version of WordPress. Where I thought to myself, you know, you could probably cobble that stuff together. But I guess that's the point, right? Is that you would have this, pay somebody $1,000, $2,000 a month, set it, forget it, walk away. Yeah, and it's kind of optimized so that you create your news posts and they get fed to the, I don't know what it does exactly, but, you know, it gets fed and syndicated out to the right people, and presumably it creates categories and archives and all that kind of stuff for you. But it just struck me as quite an interesting idea that there was only two price points. You either pay $1,000 if you've got less than 500 in revenue, or you pay $2,000. And I was just thinking, well, what would stop, like, the Times of London or something going and just like, okay, yeah, we'll happily pay you $2,000 a month, and we'll watch your servers melt under the load.
Yeah, yeah, you just wouldn't want to be having $501,000 worth of
yeah. It's just interesting, and you know, just novel that this kind of stuff, this sort of stuff was cropping up years ago in the Drupal community. There was all these different kind of different. I've forgotten what the word was. There was a specific word for like a Drupal, like a a formation of Drupal with all the modules configured, and you just download it and off you go. And it was configured for particular businesses. I've not really come across this too much in the WordPress space, so that's what caught my eye about this one. So yeah, unless anybody's got anything else to say, I'm going to hand the next one over to Paul.
Yes, I haven't got anything else to say about that. Other than I don't fully understand the model.
Yep.
Same as what you guys were saying, that that it's just based on what your revenue is. Seems a bit of an odd one compared to what your actual requirements of the platform are.
Yeah.
So, you know, because someone can have like a super popular blog about drop shipping, and they've got no revenue or something, and then someone else can have loads of revenue, and it just seems like, well, if I didn't want to pay anything, then I'd just set up a little side company. I don't know.
Well,
I was reading through, just trying to figure it out. But
here's the list of the organization. I won't read them all, but I'll read you just to give you some feeling of what it is. It's the Baltimore Jewish Times. They're one of the 12. The Bangor, which is in Maine, Daily News. The Brooklyn Eagle. The Chicago Reporter. The Heikinger Report, which is based in New York, and several others. So essentially, if you're not living in those locations, I bet you've never heard of these, you know, or maybe you lived there in the past. But it's just interesting to me that there would just be this like line drawn in the sand of 1,000 or 2,000 based upon $500,000 in revenue, and that was it. I just thought that was a really peculiar business model, which doesn't account for the enormity of you, or the you know, the exact opposite, the fact that you only have a half a dozen subscribers and you're just trying to start off. But anyway, it's a beta kind of release.
Yeah. I mean, they've got to test it out and see what people say about that. And the thing it reminds me of the most is Dr. Evil, when it's, you know, $1 million or whatever, and everyone laughs because it's not enough or it's too much and everything. That's just reading through it, you know, that's the only way I understand. That's the only thing that comes to mind. So I think they probably just need to figure out who their audience is and everything, and I'm sure they will. Anyway, but yeah.
Interesting to see it like this, though. You know, the idea that they've been given money by Automatic, so that to some extent it feels like they're kind of, in inverted commas, an authentic release of WordPress, if you like. And I was just wondering where this could end. You know, you could have like an estate agent or a real estate version of WordPress. You could have I don't know, a gamer's version of WordPress, and you know, sell these in the same kind of way. Interesting stuff. Right. Sorry.
Now I'm worried about my job. Now you say that, I'm like, oh yeah, they could. They could, you know,
a small-time web
different
freelance business version of WordPress.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So sorry. The next one is an article on the HeroPress.com website, and it's about the history and future of kids heroes in WordPress. So mainly the article is just highlighting the increase in kids events in and around WordPress. So that's things at WordCamps and meetups and some events that are purely independent on their own. The thing is, reading through it, it's really good because, I mean, to me, you think if anyone's got kids then of a certain age, then you'll know that a lot of them now just publish all the time. So they're publishing on, some of us won't know what these things are, TikTok and Instagram and Snapchat. So they're constantly publishing, but there's no support network around that. It's kind of it's, you know, survival of the fittest, and there's often a lot of negative stuff going on in those scenarios. There's a lot of kids getting bullied and stuff like that, and things can go seriously wrong. So I really love the idea of WordPress being a publishing platform that with a community behind it that can help kids to publish stuff and also know that they're publishing stuff in a safe environment and they've got people watching their back. And so it's that whole thing to me about, you know, the responsible publishing. And I love the idea that this is teaching kids new skills from completely different angles than the school system. So the school system in every country these days is, without blame to the system itself, how can these gigantic institutions keep up with how technology and stuff is changing everything for us every day? So I think this is an awesome thing for kids to get involved in. I know that one of our previous guests, Ronald, his kids went to one of the kids events at the London WordPress WordCamp, and they absolutely loved it, and they're super super duper WordPress fans now. And so yeah, that's what the article's about, and it just shows you a list of some of the different ones that have happened around the world. But the good news from it is that these events are successful, and there's more and more coming all the time.
Yeah, there's one. The most recent one was actually this weekend in Boston. There was definitely something at WordCamp Europe, not just related to WordPress. I believe it was, all sorts, marketing and everything. Yeah, I mean, what could possibly be wrong with this? It sounds a bit ridiculous, but if you've got any sort of reservations about going to WordCamp because you've got children and you think that may be an impediment to going, because you simply have nowhere else to take the children, it strikes me as like, well, why not give this a go? Turn up at the WordCamp. Let the children experience this stuff for a couple of hours, see if it works out. And I think it's few and far between that you'll find children that aren't in some way drawn to computers. It seems to be, a universally and global shared ideology to spend as much time in front of a screen as possible if you're under the age of 18. And this allows them to do this with thumbs up from the parents. So yeah, lovely. And it turns out that this all started apparently back in Kilkenny in Ireland back in March 2010, and it's advanced ever since then. But yeah, wonderful stuff.
Yeah, they can become responsible technology users just like us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and able to navigate the pitfalls of webinar platforms and things like that. Yeah, it's
not getting addicted to AppSumo and Facebook. None of that stuff.
No, but also here's another point, right, which isn't mentioned in the article. They will, if they use this methodology, if they go down the free open source software route, they will own their content and not farm it out to an engine whose primary purpose is to spit that content out in the form of adverts to somebody else, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, even if that helps them to start questioning what they're doing on these platforms that they didn't get, they didn't inherit these halfway through their lives. They got their first device and they were straight into it. That was it for them. So it was just normal. Whereas for us, we're a bit more aware. Maybe I'm speaking for myself, but I imagine that's what it's like for kids these days. They just assume this is what you do, and don't where's that data? Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. And and you're in control of it. You can do what you like. You can learn. You can adapt it. What can you learn? Well, this is going to sound ridiculous because I'm sure there's things to be learned. But what can you learn from posting things on Facebook about Facebook? Not a lot. What can you learn about posting things on about WordPress? And the answer is quite a lot. You start to tinker and fiddle. So yeah, brilliant. Okay, let's move it on. Switch it over to WP Tavern again. Jay, I think. Am I right, Jay? You've decided to take this one on. This is, I'll just let you go for it. This is Jay's.
Yeah, so I just thought it was interesting again. We discussed it on the last week's show, and I think you guys discussed it previously before in maybe a show beforehand. Just bringing up Jamstack or static websites on WordPress. So, publishing a WordPress website to a static platform like Netlify. And it was just WP Tavern article going through how the people are out there starting to try to solve the problem of having a website produced with something like WordPress and then it being published to a static hosting provider and trying to make that transition a bit easier. They just were going through some of the different options, which I thought was really interesting. And just in conjunction with that, another thing that recently came out just before last week's show was the developer of a plugin called WP GraphQL, which is a Jason Ball just recently got employed by the Gatsby project to work full time on the WP GraphQL plugin, which for those who, for people who understand WP GraphQL, it actually makes working with the WordPress REST API a bit easier. So typically, if you make a request for blog posts, but then you also want to request for the authors of those blog posts or the categories and tags, they're 3 or 4 separate requests. Whereas with GraphQL, it makes it a bit easier to actually work with an API-driven website, and then publishing it off to something like a static site like Gatsby. It actually makes the developer experience easier as well. So it sort of shows that while at the moment it's probably having a static website produced from WordPress is probably on the more technical end.
Yeah.
I think as time goes on, people are sort of moving into the space to try to solve that problem.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's a really interesting. I think it's a sorry to interrupt. It's
okay.
a really interesting area. It's not something that I've particularly dabbled in, but I can see the I can see the benefits of it from a sort of technology point of view. The capabilities that it enables, as opposed to just having basically whatever WordPress can do plus the plugin architecture. There's all sorts of things that you can drag in, but also sort of look from the security point of view. The idea that you deployed this completely static site, obviously, currently that has a huge range of benefits from a security point of view, but also a couple of drawbacks in terms of, I don't know, things like contact forms and being able to manipulate stuff in real time and all of that kind of stuff. But I wonder if this will become more popular. And, I mean, nobody can argue with the sort of speed benefits as well. A flat HTML file can be delivered in like milliseconds, as opposed to trying to compile something in PHP quickly. And fascinating, really fascinating. Again, I can't see myself. You were sort of mentioning if you understand this sort of stuff. I kind of get it from a really anecdotal level. I understand what it will bring, but I don't understand how to do it or implement it. So from my point of view, it's still very much watching it from afar, wondering what will happen and whether this is worth investing time in. And for me at the moment, I haven't invested any time other than reading about it.
Look, I'm on the same. I'm probably a little bit more on the developer side of things, but I'm on the same end as well. I haven't actually physically implemented this yet because I just can't justify it with my current crop of clients. We're building websites with either Elementor or Beaver Builder, and But I think it's something to keep an eye on, and to just watch it develop.
That's right. Yeah, I think that's right. There's all sorts of third-party services, by the way, which will kind of implement this stuff for you. We had the guys from Hardy Press on and Shifter, Shifter, who've tried to implement this sort of stuff for you. And then there's this popular plugin, increasingly popular plugin made by an Australian, I believe, Jay, called WP Static, which kind of enables this kind of stuff. I'm not sure if it works in every environment or if there are certain things, certain permutations, but it's just interesting. And then you got people like Zach Gordon, who's obviously fairly, in this arena. He's popular, and his words need to be taken seriously. He's sort of saying, I'm glad I've been banging on about this for a while, because finally it seems like people are thinking, there's something in this. Let's see how it goes. But okay.
Yeah, I think at the moment it's probably still at that point where it's sort of for high-end projects or people with big budgets who can actually afford to invest in the development time to to produce a site like that at the moment. But we'll see what happens.
Okay.
I was going to say we're experimenting with it at the moment because we're redesigning our Dicky Birds website completely, the copy, everything, different angle of business and stuff really that we're looking at for the future. And I was messing around with it this weekend, actually, whenever I was able to quickly flick the laptop on. And just as an experiment, I was using Oxygen, the Oxygen builder, to recreate our current Dicky Birds homepage, but with some new text on and stuff. And then using the plugin that we spoke about, WP Static, to output that, because, I mean...
I think I'm back?
Yeah, you're back, Vito. Yeah.
Yep. All right.
It'd be tricky, I think, on a client site, because every time they'd ask for something normal that a client would ask for, you'd be stuck. Like, how am I going to do that on a static site? But on a website like ours, it's quite a simple brochure with some, inquiry type things that we can do with SaaS tools. So we're just going to give it a go. And we might not do it, but definitely not for client sites. It's just nowhere near that. For client sites, Beaver Builder is perfect for everything that we want to do. When the client says, "Can we have this random idea?" Yep, no problem, we can do that. But with a static site, of like, can we just have a simple contact form? Could be a problem. Yeah, I thought you guys were experts. Yeah.
Suddenly you're
Suddenly we can't do anything. So.
What are you exploring because you mentioned like SaaS products? What are you exploring? What are you going to swap out? So let's say, for example, Gravity Forms gets replaced by what? What are you thinking?
Yeah, just something, because one of the agencies that we work for, things like Convert Pro, ConvertBox, these SaaS type tools can send your inquiries straight into your email autoresponder. So if you're if you're already doing some auto, I mean, a lot of this is inspired by, I know Matt's listening or watching today, his Funnel Packs product. That's got me thinking all sorts of different ways about how we take inquiries. So we don't need necessarily the inquiry to be inside WordPress. It can go straight into whatever autoresponder we use with all the fields that we need in there. We're also thinking of completely simplifying the questions that we ask, so we don't need super complicated forms. So saying this, it might all go wrong, and I'll probably hit a snag at some point, like, just forget it, install Beaver Builder. But at the moment, so far so good, and it'll be interesting because do you know what, the speeds on the page or Google Page Insight scores and the speeds were phenomenal.
Oh, really?
Especially for the mobile. The mobile, it's difficult to get over 50% on the scores.
Yeah.
It was straight up in the 80s and 90s on the mobile. Which is amazing.
Well, that's really compelling. Okay, well, I'm glad that you've had a good play with it and what have you. Yeah, I mean, it strikes me that there's a bunch of things which could replace. Well, the one which I think typically clients would want would be the contact form, and there's just a myriad of things which you could insert a piece of JavaScript from a SaaS platform. So not the end of the world, but of course, then you've got all sorts of things to keep paying for and all sorts of things to explain to your client. Yeah, we'll see. You never know. They've the guys at Hardy Press have a workaround for contact form 7. So, given enough time and given enough, I guess, work on the problem, they figured out how to do contact form 7. Maybe Gravity Forms or those other options will come in time as well. Okay, let's move on. Let's go on to the Themile one, which I'll just very briefly touch on. This presumably will be of interest to you, Paul, if you are in fact redesigning your entire offering to the public. Oh, Vito's gone again.
I'm here.
Oh, are you? You're. No, it's not. It's not Vito. It's Jay. Because Jay's gone, you've occupied the spot with Joe. We're not having much luck today, are we? But anyway, we'll keep going. Just an interesting article about the approach that the guys over at Themile, who obviously, a very high level of expertise in creating themes and making sites that look nice. And I read the whole thing. I like what they've done. It's like a process article. It's here's the things to think about. Here's the things that you should think about if you are sort of fed up with your current site. If you feel it's got a bit of a technical debt, and if it's slow and you just want to bring it up to modern times. And also, interestingly, what they believe it will cost you to pull this off with a team. And after getting right to the bottom of the article, you find out that number is somewhere in the region of about $100,000, which kind of didn't really shock me, but at the same time, I thought that's quite a serious amount of money. So they were basically saying if we were to offer this as a service, that would be the ballpark figure that we would be charging. We're going to redesign your brand. We're going to do everything to do with your website. We're going to start from scratch, wipe it all out, do it all again, reevaluate the technology stack, and we're going to charge you $100,000 for it. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. And a justification for it. So there you go.
Yeah, I like it because let's be honest, businesses. A lot of our clients have been cutting corners with their websites, and not their own fault. Maybe they don't understand the possibilities and what the websites could do for their business. But you can see this company is obviously aware, for obviously reasons, that their website is super important and critical to what they do. So they've approached it in a really good way. And they've said how much revenue that would have allocated to that project had they perhaps outsourced that to themselves as a paid agency. And it just kind of shows that they know what they're doing and what they're investing their time in. It's a brilliant article.
I think that this is something. Yeah, go on.
No, please.
I think that when we're working on our own websites, we have the power to do it right. Because when you're doing it for a client, for example, and I think I'm experiencing this really full on now with the product itself, because the website is meant to sell, as opposed to the agency side, which was generating leads and so on. But it wasn't the sole way of getting traffic and getting like leads into their business. Like the level of details that we put into the website now that it's ours is not something that we ever done with any client that we built a website for. We kind of took everything from all of them and put it into one to make like the best one. But I don't think anyone could afford, at least the clients that we had, couldn't afford the level of detail and attention that we gave to this platform. So fine, they're saying 50,000 to 100,000. That makes sense because they're building it. It's their baby, so they invest more into it rather than going out and someone else will do it for them.
Yeah, fascinating. The cost of getting a decent website built and the cost of paying people decent salaries and so on. I mean, we've always heard this number, haven't we? $10,000 websites, then the $100,000 website. Well, they do exist. They're just harder to find, that's for sure. But the article, I think, illustrates nicely what you need to think about and the kind of approach that you need to take. So fascinating stuff. The next one is going to be handled. Now, this will be interesting because it's going to be handled by both Paul and Jay simultaneously, apparently. They're both going to talk about the experimental block areas plugin, which is new to Gutenberg. Content site-wide editing with Gutenberg. What more could we want? Who's going to take this first? Should we go with Jay?
Jay, you go ahead.
What I thought is interesting with this is, we talked about before the 80-20 rule, how WordPress was we're talking about plugins and things like that, and forms and security and things like that. And this is one of those things, one of those areas that I feel like WordPress is always, especially when I was brand new to WordPress, I actually came from Drupal. And one of the first things I was trying to work out how to do was how do I put content that's sort of outside of the editor, like the standard editor, or how do I put site-wide content that's maybe not in one of these prescribed widget areas or things like that, or if I wanted to have more control over content like a header or somewhere like that. And certain themes are providing workarounds for that, like Generate Press and Dave's what is it called, there's a few themes with like widget
page builder framework.
Builder framework, that's the one I'm thinking of. I'm drawing blanks, but they've got some, both those sort of themes have got those hook areas effectively where you can use a page builder to just put content in in a header or in between the title and the header, and I just felt like this is something that's long overdue. And at the moment it's experimental and it doesn't seem like it's part of the official Gutenberg going forward, but I'd love to see something like this going forward, where there's a standard way to do this, and themes just sort of have to build in sort of support for this, in a very easy way. Yep,
it looks good. I mean, I must admit the work that these guys are putting in. By the way, the plugin, the experimental plugin, is called Block Areas. And the sort of the quote is, it will enable users to create and edit content site-wide using Gutenberg. Make of that what you will. It's still fairly technical. I don't think it's the sort of thing, if you're a complete noob to WordPress, probably this isn't for you, because there's a lot that is required. There's a lot that still doesn't work. But if you're into this idea, I'm with you, Jay. I remember coming from, if you've never used anything other than WordPress, you will not understand the massive frustration that WordPress presents by default of having a content area, content. Whereas with Drupal, there was that out the box, but immediately you would learn that you could add in other areas similar to what things like ACF does, but all of that was built in. And so I had that exact same frustration, thinking, well, how? And eventually you figure it out. But the idea that you would be able to do this in an editing interface which is familiar to you, the learning curve will be pretty much zero. Fascinating. I don't know whether this way of doing it will be the way that we will do it in 5 years' time, but it certainly seems like this is the direction of travel anyway. So, Paul, sorry, you were obviously wanting to speak about this as well, but I interrupted.
No, it's fine. I do start to feel now I can see, not completely clearly, but I can start to predict now that I'm getting more comfortable with the whole idea of the block editor. And at the beginning, the block editor was Gutenberg, and it was this fairly crap thing that was replacing the classic editor. So people were talking about, predicting this would be, the thing you use to control the whole site. And I was really struggling to see it at that point, because it's just like, it doesn't even do a good job just for the content. But it's getting better now, and people are, it's kind of maturing. And I can imagine, a theme like GeneratePress in the future, in a couple of years time, perhaps these kind of themes, you get the theme and the certain aspects and hooks and all that sort of stuff there, but the theme actually comes with its own header block, which is the GeneratePress header block, or the GeneratePress footer block or something. And instead of those controls being in the customizer, the exact same control that you have now is just in a block, and you can decide, I'm not going to use the GeneratePress block. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to use the GeneratePress theme, but I'm going to go and get the Page Builder Framework header block instead, because I like that one better or something. People will be able to chop and change things without kind of saying, I'm in on this theme, I'm in on this page builder and stuff. I think things will break up and just be a lot more modular than they are at the moment. But that's my little prediction anyway. But it makes good reading.
Yeah, it's nice. It just makes it kind of feels like at last this whole Gutenberg thing is starting to make a bit more sense. And although I'm reading the news from these cutting edge developers who are making these these experimental plugins, none of this stuff is yet visible. You can't actually use any of this stuff unless you go out and try on a development site. So it's still, the current iteration that we've got is still super basic, and it doesn't satisfy the needs that I have for building a website, but it gives me a glimmer into the endeavors that people are making to bring Gutenberg up to full site capability. And I can't see it being very long. The roadmap for Gutenberg, it feels like this will be in the next couple of years. Okay, right, Vito, we're going to ask you at this point to close your ears, because we're going to talk about Project Huddle. The reason I say that sort of comedy is that Vito has a product, WP Feedback, which is a rival. So I'm just going to mention it very briefly, and that is to say that Project Huddle have got a new release. If you're using their software, then you'll probably like this. The first one is that it takes automatic screenshots. When somebody makes a comment, it automatically takes a screenshot and puts it in the comment thread, so that you can see exactly what they were looking at the moment that they made that comment, which I could see being entirely useful. And the second thing is they've got this adaptation to their notification controls, which is to say that now, simply by clicking on sort of like a little tiny avatar, you can decide who's going to receive the comments that you're posting at that moment. So you'd click on Paul's picture, or you pick on Jay's picture or my picture, and just by on and offing them, that those people are going to receive the notification, and leave out all the people that probably don't need it, that the system previously would have automatically sent notifications to. And lastly, you can use Markdown if that's your thing. You can use Markdown shortcuts to make things bold and italic and so on. So there we go, Project Huddle update. And
I've actually got both the tools.
Okay.
It's interesting because we've got, how many themes have we got in WordPress, and how many plugins that sort of do a similar thing? I think there is plenty of space for sure. To have two products that have got some similarities. Then you've got other things like Content Snare. Then you've got other tools that are similar to Content Snare and stuff like that for collecting content. And to be honest, if everybody who would genuinely benefit from these tools knew what they could do for their businesses, then there would be need for another 2 or 3 of them. But yeah, it's good to see these updates for anyone who is a Project Huddle user in there. I've personally switched from Project Huddle to WP Feedback, because these features that are coming out now in Project Huddle are the ones that WP Feedback. Yeah, these are the ones that got me even using a tool like that again. I'd lapsed and I wasn't using Project Huddle at all. And WP Feedback is part of my everyday stuff now. It's completely baked into our processes, and I'm just spending all the time adding stickers to websites. So for anyone who is already subscribing to Project Huddle, then great, you're getting some features that you probably really want.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Okay.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, nice.
No
Nice.
worries.
Unsolicited
Yeah.
plug. That's always good. I'm going to move us on to the security stuff. As I've said before, we basically aren't going to cover this stuff. It's a bit too technical, although I see that Paul wants to mention one of them, so we'll let Paul do that in a moment. But a couple of things. The first one is over on what I mean by that is I'm not going to delve into the weeds of it. I've read them all, but I'm just going to say the name of the plugins, and then hopefully you yourself will go off and explore this. This one actually affected me, so I had to go and update this quickly. But I noticed in my main WP install, which is what I use to update things, that the update came before the WordFence post, which was quite nice. But I am the kind of guy that does the updating every day. So if I'd left it a day or two, then it wouldn't have. This is an ad inserter plugin. So I use this to insert the ads into like the second and the fifth paragraph on a post over at WP Builds. And they had a critical vulnerability which was patched in there. And it's an authenticated remote code execution. So not very nice. Paul, I'll come back to this one in a minute, but it's all about the WP migration tool. I'll let you talk about that. And then WordFence and iThemes have started. I don't know how long it's been going, but they do this roundup of things that have happened in the previous couple of weeks. So I've linked to the WordFence equivalent and the iThemes equivalent. The one thing that I like about the iThemes equivalent is that they lay it out in such a way that you can sort of scroll and very, very quickly learn about the plugins which they have had issues with. So, for example, right at number one is Yoast, there's WooCommerce, there's Ad Inserter, which you just mentioned, there's Ocean Extra, WP Statistics, and so on. So you can scroll through this and see. And the idea here really, I think, is just scroll through. If any of the names look familiar, go and take a closer look. If not, keep scrolling. But back to Paul, all-in-one WP migration. That's interesting that you want to talk about that.
Yeah, it's just the news story on that one is that they didn't put it down in their changelog as a security patch. It just went down as a general patch, which I know Adam Pricer from WP Crafter picked up on that and and put it on his own news show. And he wasn't too impressed that they did that, which is fair, because we do need to know if there's a security patch. But I just wanted to kind of chuck in an alternative opinion on that maybe all of the different plugin creators don't know exactly what the process is when something like this happens. And I think the expectation is that I think the accusation in a way was that they were hiding it. That they were hiding that there was a security patch. It might. I just think it might not be the case that actually happened. It might just be that there's no shame in thinking, oh, we had a security issue, we had to patch it. Let's just put it in the changelog. And maybe plugin creators just don't know all of the time. You need to categorize that as this. You need to categorize it as that, because that fix might have been multiple things. But it's really just a sort of just to say, everybody deserves a second chance. So hopefully next time they've got a security issue, hopefully they'll remember that they got some stick for it, which means criticism in English slang, and that next time they've got a problem, that they just tag that in the changelog as a security fix. And to me, if you see something in the changelog that says security fix, it means that you fixed a security issue, and you should be kind of proud that those things are tagged in there, that you quickly solve the problem. Because look at the list on iThemes. So every week there's a massive list of major plugins with security issues. It's not like something to be ashamed of. It's just something that it's just part of life. It's just part of life as a WordPress theme or plugin creator, I think. So.
Yeah, Chris Hughes in the comments is saying if they don't say security update in the plugin changelog, people may postpone the update until another day, convenient time. Then.
Good point.
From a personal point of view, that wouldn't affect what I did. I just update everything pretty much as soon as it comes along, regardless of what the fix is. Even if it's just something utterly trivial and banal. Okay, let's move on. A couple of things from me, that is to say WP Builds. We released a podcast episode this week with Jan Koch, and it's really wonderful. We had lots of really nice feedback about Jan and his approach. It's talking about making your WordPress websites load faster. Now, obviously, you can't in 40 minutes really attempt to address that in get into the thick of it, but he really has a good go. So if you've got a slow site, you've got clients who are breathing down your neck about this kind of stuff, there's lots of interesting stuff in there, and you can take from it what you will, do the things that you can do, and nice talking points. Really, a lot of the stuff that he talks about, you could go to the clients potentially. There's a whole load of extra work which you could be doing, especially on sites which you've taken over from other people. So go check that out. And the other one to mention is that I'm doing a webinar, kind of like a live webinar with Pictionary. Hopefully, but by the time it goes live, we'll have the software working. Otherwise, we're doomed, Captain Mannering. And it's all about UI and UX. And what she's done is she's taken some user-provided URLs who, some people have said, can you have a look at my website? And she's literally going to review them for them. So hopefully they'll get some nice free advice, free pointers. She is, after all, a bit of an expert in the UX UI way, and she's doing these audits, reviews of websites. I thought that was a nice offer for her to make. So join us. That is.
Be able to take it.
Yeah, I was going to say you've got to be braver than me.
Well, I submitted my own URL, then I immediately said, "Actually, can I take it?"
I just wouldn't be able to take it. Sorry, tell everyone it's on.
Yeah. That's happening at Wednesday, 24th at 3:00 UK time. Do you know what, though? Because what you could do, an interesting thought I had about that, it doesn't necessarily have to be something that you built. It could be a client site, and you're just thinking, how can I pitch this to the client? They want a new redesign. What is it I'm going to say? What are the salient points? And she might just come up with some interesting snippets that you yourself didn't think of. Anyway, there we go. That's the WP Build stuff. Now, Paul, talk to us about Google publishing new JavaScript SEO basics.
So Paul, just before you go there, I just got to say goodbye because I have another call starting in 1 minute.
No worries, mate.
But yeah, it's a pleasure as always.
That's of me screwing up. Well, it wasn't me. The technology balked on us, so sorry about that, Vito.
No worries. I was happy to be here as long as I could.
Thanks so much.
Right. Have a good week, guys.
See you soon.
See you, Vito.
Bye.
Take care.
Okay, so let's carry on with that one then. So Paul, tell us about Google publishing new guides for JavaScript SEO basics.
I think it's a nice thing that they've done because they've probably noticed that a lot of people are interested in all this new way of doing things, with lots of JavaScript controlling things versus the sort of static or dynamically generated pages from things like PHP and stuff like that. And I guess you could easily dive into this technology and be super excited about it and then forget all about these important things. Like, as a result of this super amazing website, suddenly your rankings just drop and you're not sure why. So I think this is a good guide because web developers and product creators do need to know that if they are using this technology, how will the search engines be interpreting the pages and the content that they're putting out there. So this is kind of a nice guide and a reassurance, I suppose, that if you are developing new projects in this particular way and you're kind of at the cutting edge, then here is the stuff that you need to know so that you don't slip up from a Google and search engine rankings position.
Yeah, it's just not an area I have any expertise in, and it's just fascinating all the things that Google are doing to access that stuff, which is hidden until you click on this button, and it's amazing, really amazing. They're going to start, nothing to do with JavaScript, but they're going to start indexing what we say. So on the podcast, they're going to start indexing that content and make search recommendations based upon the actual words that we speak, which will be really interesting. So suddenly a website which has got literally zero text content but hundreds of hours of audio content suddenly is going to become an SEO benefit, which I just think is fascinating. I fear I interrupted you, Jay. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say one thing I thought, just having a quick read through the document before the show, is I was fully expecting to see like a 200-page document. This is heavy technical, but this is like 4 or 5 pages long. It's quite, it's got some diagrams. It's pretty. I mean, depending on your background, you might not necessarily understand all the development parts of it, but it's actually fairly approachable and fairly easy to get an understanding of what they're actually talking about. And even if you're not producing websites that are as dynamic and using as much JavaScript as maybe this guide is targeting, I think it's valuable to have a quick read through for any web developer.
Well, just from the point of view of having a modicum of knowledge about what Google is trying to do in the future, I think that's it's a good pitch to the client. At least you can stay slightly ahead of the curve, even if it's not your area of massive expertise. Alex, thanks for making that comment. He's saying, he's asking about what I was just talking about. It's the actual audio. They're going to literally listen and transcribe the audio. And then put that presumably into the rankings in some way. I don't know what weight it will have over pre-written text, but anyway, there you go. So podcasts will get searchable. So your audio, your audio MP3 file will be searchable, and presumably it will be able to take you to the exact part of a podcast where the bit that you've searched for was spoken about. So that's quite fascinating. Right. So last couple of ones. The penultimate one is Jay talking about DuckDuckGo.
Yeah, no, I just thought this was pretty interesting because I primarily use Google as my daily search engine, but every so often I want results that aren't necessarily don't have my information. So I want less biased results. I want something that's like, okay, if I'm just a brand new user and I'm searching a particular term, I'm not getting it through Google. I jump on and use DuckDuckGo, and I've actually found the results quite good. But one thing I've always thought is, like, are these guys making any money, or how many people are actually using it? It's really interesting to see that they're not only have they been making money, which I don't know how they do make money, but they've been making money for the last 5 years, and they're actually they're actually growing, and seems like they're growing at a reasonable sort of rate, albeit a low search rate in comparison to what would be going through Google, but. Yeah, it's good to see some actual competition. They're probably not, scaring Google by any chance, but yeah, it's good to see that they're profitable and their daily search results are actually growing. So I thought it was encouraging.
I use it fairly frequently now. Actually, I'd say maybe one in 20 of the searches. That's probably an exaggeration. It's probably more like 1 in 50 of the searches that I do just to see how it's going. And I found it to be, I mean, nothing that I'm searching is particularly weird or eccentric or out there. So, they've got a good handle on that, but it seems perfectly serviceable to me. It's got a decent image library. If you want to sort of, find an image of a particular thing, it seems to, and I just kind of wonder, that maybe they're just not trying to be Google. They're just trying to offer a free non-trackable, they're not keeping any data on what you've looked for. And that's the point, right? Privacy. They're just trying to make enough money to keep going and grow. And I don't know how they make money, but they can't remember what the phrase was. It does say profitable for the last 5 years. DuckDuckGo has been profitable for the past 5 years, according to this report. And recent growth should help ensure that it remains the case for the time being. Why not? In every other form of life, you don't accept a monopoly, do you? If in the UK your supermarket of choice was the only one that you could go to, you'd be a bit ticked off about that and assume that they were ripping you off in some way. I think the same could be said of search engines. I know that there are others like Bing and so on, but I'm not sure that race has been lost already. Same in browsers, Mozilla and Firefox and what have you. And I just like the underdog, and I like the fact that they've got this policy of no tracking. So I'm happy about that. The last one. Sorry, Paul.
Oh yeah, I was going to say I DuckDuckGo'd how many Google searches there are a day. Apparently, it's around 5.5 billion. I don't know how accurate that is. So 40 million is still a decent chunk. And if you think, the internet in general, the web is becoming such a pay-to-play place for us, especially for business owners. If you want to, get anywhere on the web these days, it's a lot of the time it's pay-to-play. So you think, what happens if I might have even said this before. What happens if the majority of people get wise of this kind of stuff, which could easily happen? Everyone starts using DuckDuckGo, everyone starts using VPN, everyone has ad blockers. basically everyone's gone totally private rather than the majority being, rather than the people who are going private being a minority. What does that mean to what does that mean to the massive systems that completely rely on selling data? Is the future of Google in trouble because the world might just decide to go private?
No, my personal opinion on that is that the value that they provide, for most people, that trade-off is a worthwhile trade-off. You know, they're monitoring your location, but their mapping software is utterly compelling. They're you know, they're reading your emails, but they're able to offer helpful guidance when it's time to get on a plane. And all of those kind of things. And I think there's enough. I don't think they've done anything so scary yet, although I think some of the things that I've read, are a little bit scary. Nothing has made me go, oh, good grief, that's crossed the line. That is unsanctionable. You never know. Maybe they are gathering data to make that stuff, it could become a reality. But I just think that the trade-off for Google, for me, is totally worth it. There's so much stuff for free. And I mean, for goodness sake, it's free, I mean, it's completely free at the point of use, isn't it? So yeah, that's my opinion on it. I'll keep using Google because I love what they do. They haven't done anything so cataclysmically bad, and the benefit I get far outweighs the drawbacks. However, history shows that kind of stuff can turn on a dime. So it might be that, if they did drop the ball somewhere or do something nefarious, that could all change, but not at the moment. Amazing how I sort of listening to somebody the other day using the argument that the internet basically is Google. Everybody uses Google as a conduit to find the stuff on the internet. And whilst the destination might not be Google, it's pretty likely that Google at some point has been involved in the interaction to get you from your thought to where you actually want to get to.
It's interesting because I think one of the things as well is like the power of default as well. Like, people now, they don't say, oh, I'm going to search for this on the internet. I'm going to Google it. It just becomes just ingrained in people's psyche, which is, it's good to see though that, obviously I don't think DuckDuckGo is going to, scare Google by any chance, but, it's good to see that there's some alternatives out there. Nobody's being it at the moment. But
no. The thing is as well, they've become, how to describe it? The internet is still relatively new. These players evolved in the last 20 years and have become so dominant, Amazon in terms of e-commerce, Google in terms of search. Now trying to upturn them, trying to become more dominant than them is, I think, almost impossible now. But I mean, history again shows that is never the case forever. That there will not be Google forever. Amazon will not exist forever, but it might be here for a jolly long time into the future. Fascinating. The article. Sorry. I
was going to say, I guess DuckDuckGo have really only replaced the typable search interface. Yeah, and that's just only, even if we talk about 5.5 billion searches, that's just, I guess, the typed searches. That's not speech searches and recommended content and all this kind of thing. So I think it's going to take a lot to topple the mighty Google.
It's interesting. Bring back Alta Vista.
Bring back those. They weren't even search engines. What were they? They were like lexicons,
Microx or something like that.
Interesting, like how Google has become almost like a member of the family for, I think, particularly the younger generation. There is absolutely no thought of going to look something up in a book or going off to research something. And the default is just Google it, and once they've got that position, that's very hard to topple, especially, with their compelling offering with Chromebooks and Google Docs being used widely in education. I can see Google kind of growing, even, especially in the minds of the younger generation. Oh yeah, we've got these Chromebooks in school. That must be what you do to type documents out. That's the way we'll do it, and so it grows. Yeah. But Microsoft, there you go. There's a perfect example. Microsoft seems to be 15 years ago. It was the Google. Everybody was talking about Microsoft, and now it seems to be struggling, shall we say. Right, last one. I'm not even going to try and get into this. All I'm going to say is just to keep the time short, because we've probably overrun massively, is go and check this article out on Post Status. It's called Preserving the Wilderness, and it's just a fascinating read. It's kind of weirdy, kind of gets a little bit political at times. It's definitely a bit left-leaning, but I enjoyed reading it, and I would commend it to you. But I won't try to get into the weeds of it because it's difficult. And time, I think, is not on our side. I am super sorry, guys, for the technology failure at the beginning. It wasn't my fault. It was Ecamm. I should be writing them a strongly worded letter. Like that'll do anything. But thank you, Jay. Thank you, Vito. Thank you, Paul. As always, deadly sincere thanks from me. I know it sounds a bit hollow sometimes, but I do mean it. Do you want to share anything that's coming up this week? If you want to, now is the time. Paul, anything happening for you?
Got a couple of things going on, actually. I found that doing this show once a week, and it's at 2 o'clock, gives me a really productive morning, because I'm always racing towards, to having a break for an hour talking about, stuff. So I've tried this idea, which I haven't implemented. It's still an idea, which is to every day at 2 o'clock do something for myself or for the business. So there's a little idea that you could do, whether that's like a bit of business development time or go to the gym. I've done neither yet, but it's a great idea. I think it's a brilliant idea. Yeah.
Oh, I like it. If you should become like seriously much more profitable or in any way improve your I am going to take full credit for that. I think you owe me
it's
that.
in that contract. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks. That's cool. I like that. I don't do that, but I think there's a lot of sense in that. Yeah. Leo says, "Good call." He likes the idea of you doing that. What about you, Jay? Anything happening this week?
I've just been blown away by Paul's idea. I can't top that, to be honest.
Okay. In which case,
mundane. I'm building websites and things like that. So. But yeah, thanks very much for having us on again this week.
You're welcome. And I'm super sorry for keeping you up beyond what we should have done because of the technology snafu at the beginning. I don't even know how to end it off this platform. But I'm going to try. I'm going to click stop on the recording. So that's been done at least. And I think when I click this end webinar button, I've forgotten how to do it in these live ones. It will end. But thank you, Paul. Thank you, Jay. And we'll see you again next week or whenever it is that you've booked.